And we're back.
We are.
We are all
So
the way. I'm ready to talk about Danny. You and I, we got together. We had the rule set. We had the 9th edition points. So we pulled together 2,000 points of forces.
We did.
To play against each other in our first game of 9th.
It was super fun.
It was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just because I haven't actually played 40K since March.
It's possible, yeah. Same.
Possible, but I had a lot of fun with it. So we did my Death Guard versus your Necrons, using some of the new models from the Indominus box.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about your list and kind of the thought you went behind that.
So, first of all, I'd like to preface this that we did kind of have to make some gentlemanly agreements with how the rules interacted because of the new Indominus Necrons don't quite work with the current Necron book.
Right.
So we agreed that We'll Be Back gets done in the command phase, which, whether or not that actually happens, that's fine. It doesn't matter. But yeah, man.
Because there was some really weird interactions that just didn't sort of make sense.
Otherwise, like if it was before the command phase, then like the reanimator doesn't really work.
Right.
Stuff like that. So,
but I'm sure in like a month or something when Necrons get their codex, it's all going to be it's all going to be fixed.
The levels of hype are just
It's
unbelievable.
just like off the chart hype right now.
If I could make a graph of it, I couldn't.
It would be misconstrued.
It would be on the
they would
bounds
take
of the
data.
graph.
Yeah. It would be labeled Danny's hype, and you would explain what the hype is in the body of the text, and then people would be like, "This is what Danny feels about clubbing seals. His hype is huge."
Do you remember the name of the mission we played? We played the one with the data ports. So
It was
it's
mission 6.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember that.
It was Vanguard deployment.
Yep.
Which they thankfully gave you real measurements
so
for.
good.
So for the actual deployment zone. However, the objectives they don't.
There was a little bit of math involved.
Yeah. So we had to do a little bit of measuring and
Something
guesswork.
I learned on this phase is place your objectives before terrain.
Yep.
Because we set up our table. We're like, okay, this seems a little dense, but that's okay. And we set everything up, and then when we place the objectives, the rules specifically state that you cannot have an objective
Correct.
like on a piece of terrain. So we're like, well, now we have to move a bunch of stuff.
Sure. And we didn't want the objectives to get obscured too much by the terrain, and so we used our lovely mob rules objective markers.
Available nowhere.
Yep. Sorry, guys. So basically, you just have to have the 40 millimeter base that your objectives count as. That's where that can't be on the terrain. But the whole thing, like the zone that you can score in, could be technically in the terrain.
Sure. But we did have like a couple where we had to move buildings and kind of move some stuff out of the way,
Which is fine.
So fine. Objective placement was strange for me. It was a weird one. So we had like 1 in each of our zones,
And then 4 in the middle, and
then 4 in the diagonal along the middle. That was like I said, it was strange. I know I struggled a lot with primary, kind of as we were playing, and I think one of that was I wasn't used to like that kind of objective placement.
Sure. Well, and to be fair, the way that the mission is scored now is very different from what we're used to, because we typically have played ITC in the past for the most part.
For at least 4 or 5 years at this point, right?
Totally. And the Champions missions for at least 3 years, and those are very different than this.
Yeah.
So, the goal of these missions, you get half your points pretty much are going to be from the primary mission, which has nothing to do with killing models.
No.
So, you just have to push. I was losing models left and right. I felt like I was losing stuff pretty often.
I think I killed at least 120 models through the course of the game.
Yeah, because warriors.
I think the most depressing part was the 3 times I killed your warrior squads down to a single man.
Yeah,
and then
that did happen.
They all came back, and I'm like, man, I should have picked the secondary that gives me points for just killing models over and over again, because I'm real good at that.
Yeah, because so the way that it worked, with the Canoptic Reanimator giving a +1,
right,
and then
which the Canoptic Reanimator is that big spooky
the spider guy,
Cthulhian spider dude.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So he didn't die very quickly. I don't think he died at all.
He didn't. No, I ignored him.
Yeah, and he probably should have been a primary target, I think.
Yeah. So there you go. Tactic number 1 against new Necrons: the dudes who give bonuses to getting back up,
the reanimation,
kill them very quickly.
Yeah, probably kill those guys. And he's not even that tough, really. You could have killed him easily.
It's like T5 or something like that.
He's T5 with 6 wounds.
That's so. Yeah. Live and learn. Well, die and learn, I guess. But no spoilers. We'll get to that later.
Vehicles blowing up.
Oh,
Because remember, there was a squad of Necron warriors that was down to like one guy.
Yep.
And one of your vehicles blew up and it wiped out the rest of the Necron warriors, so I couldn't bring any back.
I was very happy about that. That was
Yeah.
like a big clutch moment. Movement. And we talked about this a little kind of in our ninth watch and kind of things leading up to that. So key.
Dude, you have to have. So you can, if you want to give up the mission to your opponent, like on the first turn, that's fine. If you're a slower army, in fact, a slow army might want to go second,
Right.
so that you can wait for your opponent to jump on the objectives, and then you can counter push onto those objectives.
Right. Which is something kind of after our game, because I got the choice of going first or second. I chose to go first.
Which I think you want to do a lot most of the time.
Most of the time, but when I have like my army was not speedy for the most part. So I really needed to go second to get that. Another thing I noticed from this was vehicles, while super cool in the new rules, with new terrain density and terrain rules, really limiting.
Right. Because remember, like your, sorry about that. What was his name again? I forgot.
I forget. We'll call him
Do we write it on here?
Gavin.
Yeah, Gavin. Thank you, Gavin. Sorry, Gavin. The typical table will have like 18 pieces of terrain on it.
Right.
And vehicles have got to pay a lot of movement to go up and over most of that terrain.
Right.
So unless you have fly, of course, but still, not everybody has that, and they can't like go through a wall like an infantry unit can for units or for breachable terrain. That's the key word for that. So yeah, I mean, you can really like bottleneck somebody who has vehicle heavy army, especially if you can block them off from getting objectives. Like that's extremely powerful.
So something Danny did really well in our game was he had 2 ghost arcs that he moved up to block off half of the objectives.
Yep.
And I just couldn't get through them with like all of my heavy hitters ignored because of quantum shielding. And then all of my little hitters having to kind of redirect to take care of like the mass warrior squads that were coming my way.
Right.
You know, it made some real difficult target priority decisions for me there. And then when I have 3 plague burst crawlers, which are big, wide tanks,
Right. They are.
that I had very few to 0 lanes of movement I could move in, combined with the blight haulers, which again, because they have to maintain coherency and move around as a unit.
And are they on 60s or 80 millimeter bases?
They're on 80s, I want to say. They're very large bases.
Yeah, they're big.
It made me really reconsider, and especially I think we've had this conversation. It's like I don't see myself taking more than 2 blight haulers in the future.
You mean plague burst crawlers?
Plague burst crawlers,
Yeah,
because like how limited I was for the movement, and not just kind of the movement of the tanks, but I would have to move the plague burst crawlers first to make sure that they could get in position, which then knock-on effect affected my entire army on how that could move.
Right.
Which is just insane. We've been talking about how transports are going to be like more of a thing because as we saw in our game, Danny, you pulled ahead really early on the primary objective, and I just couldn't get back on it because I couldn't push forward onto that objective.
Sure.
I'm even thinking things like transports, like, okay, I have to put my guys in the transport so they can get forward early to go to that primary objective and capture those objectives. But I'm going to run into the same issue with rhinos of having those lanes blocked and kind of really having to make difficult choices. So I think we're going to see really soon army composition, if terrain is played correctly, is going to be like really dictated by a local terrain meta.
Sure.
So when we get to something where you and I, we get down to Vegas in February or January next year, we go through like the finger in the butt, of
course,
the
finger in the nose,
the cotton swab to the brain,
right,
to make sure we can go there safely. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what all of the different players from across the U.S. and the world who are hopefully going to be coming there consider appropriate terrain.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what how the frontline guys feel about that, and whether or not they.
Did you know that the Primaris Intercessors backpack things twist?
No,
I did not know that. We on our little set dressing, we have the 12-inch Bandai.
It's really cool.
Intercessor. His little backpack vents twist, which I see as pointless.
Are they stabilization vents too, though?
I mean, they might be. I mean, he's starting to fall over now that I started touching him.
I wish he was a little bit more stable.
Yeah.
Oh man, we've lost him. He's
That's
dead.
okay. Yeah. Keep talking, Danny.
Anyway, oh, you ruined the joke.
There you go.
I think units and transports are going to be extremely valuable. I think you almost want these units to like be your objective getters,
Right.
Because it's an extra thing you have to kill to take somebody off of an objective.
Sure.
So like that list that I talked about with orcs at the beginning of the episode, right? It has 6 trucks, all with squads inside. So not only do you have to kill the truck, but you also have to kill 10 boys, and you have to kill all 10. You have to kill like probably like 9 of the boys. Yeah, you have to kill 9 of the boys to get them to run away, because probably the last guy is not going to run away.
Right.
Which is huge. Like that's a big deal. And they'll like they can all hold those objectives. So I think like MSU is going to be really powerful in that respect.
Right.
Now with your list, right? Well, during our game, your blight drone did awesome. That was a great unit. You should definitely take more of those.
So my list for my 2,000 points, and this was using the new point values found in chapter approved. I had a blight drone. I had 3 plague burst crawlers, 3 blight haulers. I had a typhus. I had a squad of 18 poxwalkers, a squad of 15 poxwalkers. I had a malignant plague caster who was my warlord.
Yep.
He had the plague weapon pistol relic.
Yep.
I had a squad of 18 plague marines with 2 blight launchers in there. A plague surgeon. I had the bell dude with the relic bell. And that was about it, I think. And the whole idea behind it was just kind of buffing the Plague Marine unit to just be an unbelievably tanky, great unit.
Right. Just something that you would have a hard time touching.
Which it was, because you killed, I think, 1 or 2 Plague Marines.
I just didn't really shoot at it or try and interact with it.
Because they were 5++.
Right.
Or sorry, 3+, 5++. They're disgustingly resilient, can be buffed to a 4++. I'm re-rolling 1s and 2s.
Right, from the Plague Surgeon.
From the Plague Surgeon, because I paid extra for the Sons of Mortarion, or Mortarion's Chosen Sons special Plague Surgeon thing. And there was a really great unit. I think it was a little too large. I will say that unit in 1 round of shooting wiped out an entire squad of 20 warriors.
Down to 1 guy.
Oh, down to 1 guy, which that 1 guy then died.
To the explosion.
Right. And like I said, it did a lot of work, but yeah, like the plague drone, I made some really good plays with that guy.
He did good. He almost killed my my Scorptech Destroyer Lord. So that was pretty cool.
So, I mean, I used a lot of the new stratagems from Psychic Awakening. So I was able to wipe out the squad of 3 Scorptech dude boys. What were they called?
Oh, yeah, the Scorpok destroyers.
Right. So the destroyers, I was able to wipe those guys out by popping the stratagem to change his plague spewers to 2 damage.
Yeah, that was brutal, man.
Which was brutal, and just it took the squad. And then something else I was able to do on my...
Oh, that's what happened. Okay, that's right. He totally wiped out the destroyers, but not the Lord. The Lord heroically intervened into him and killed him, but
it took him like a turn and a half to do.
Yeah, he didn't do it in one go, for sure.
And then another thing I was able to do to really put some hurt on things was I popped the extra 6-inch Plague Spitters stratagem on my Plague Burst Crawler.
Yeah.
Which was able to snipe out some stuff that you didn't think was going to be in range.
Right.
So like just
brutal.
Those guys were really good. And the benefit of the fly keyword this edition is so huge.
It's really good.
And that's something we saw in our game through your use of Ghost Arcs, through my drone, my blight drone, was just how key fly is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the changes that happened in 9th edition. Both of us, I think, are safe to say, very happy Overwatch isn't really a thing anymore.
Yeah, me too. It just, that sped up the game. Okay, so one thing to note about this game in particular is that we got through the entire game, our very first game of 9th.
5 turns.
Yeah, in 3 hours. Like, without any practice, without anything else. So that's the standard round time of a tournament game of 40K, and we were easily done. We bullshitted. Like, it wasn't like a super hard and fast game like we were both playing to the max or anything. Like, I think you can easily have a 2.5 hour timer on these games and get through that many.
So yeah, we played relaxed.
Yep.
We both had model heavy lists.
Yeah, for sure. Because I took 60 warriors in my list.
Right, I had like 40 almost poxwalkers. I had 20 plague marines. I had tanks,
Yeah.
like everything.
Yeah.
We had model heavy lists. We didn't know the rules all that well. We stopped several times to look stuff up.
Right.
We bullshitted all the way through. We still made it through all 5 rounds in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible to pull back. And like that speed comes from losing things like Overwatch, where does it suck a little? Yeah. Like as someone who mainly like does assault armies, it sucks. But me declaring a charge and then just instantly being able to do it instead of waiting for 3 hours for you to roll your aggressor dice. It was just so key to my enjoyment of the time.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's not like you're just waiting for your opponent to blow you off the table with no recourse, right? Which is great.
Right. And it was super good. Something else that came up a lot, vehicles, shooting in combat.
Yeah, so we had a couple of cool interactions.
We had a couple of like really irritating as shit interactions, but they're great. And it goes to kind of show it's a lot more tactical depth than just vehicle shooting combat.
Right.
So why don't you tell me some of the bullshit stuff you pulled off?
Okay, so
Not that I'm bitter.
man, my Ghost Arc does really good in combat.
Like, does really well.
It shoots 20 shots, rerolling ones, like at strength 4 -1 AP, which is pretty good.
Right.
I feel like, because, my army was Nihilak, by the way, because like that's what my army's painted as, and it worked out pretty good for what I was taking my guys. The other cool thing that I did, and I was pretty proud of myself about this,